Hey everyone, happy Monday and welcome back to Medical Morons. For today's episode, we're chatting with Dr. Brigitte White. She's involved in a ton of cool ventures, but I really wanted to pick her brain about her oral care line, Bright White's Oral Care. We got into the nitty-gritty details, like how do you even formulate a product when you're not, an engineer or a chemist? We also dug into how she even got the idea. Why launch a product when you already have like a stable company, private practice? She was so incredibly honest about all of it. And after talking to her, I feel like I could totally figure out how to create my own product in the future if I ever decide to go for it. So, Dr. White is the CEO and co founder of Bright White's Oral Care. She also has a private practice called Bright White's Dental in Northern Virginia and is a published author and blogger, which don't worry, we get into in the episode. She earned her dental degree from the University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine after studying public policy and international affairs at Princeton University, if you've ever heard of that. Wow.
That first of all, in addition to making me feel incredibly inadequate in terms of what I've done in my life,
No, she should be 80 years old.
she
Given
is
what she's accomplished, why
she
is
is
she
a
half that?
I mean, she is incredibly impressive. She's so observant of things that are going on and opportunities that exist because of unmet needs or gaps that she's able to see. And I'm speaking specifically about the dental products. Brilliant that she's devising a line directed to women's health care. I mean, I had no idea that there was a need for that, but she's obviously articulates a very compelling case for why that's a market opportunity that's unmet. And I think it's brilliant that she's developing products to address it.
Brilliant. And
Yeah.
because of her mission and because it's a small business, like it makes me, like I said, I'm not loyal to any toothpaste or anything like that as long as it has the ingredients I need. So it makes me, as a woman, I'm like, why would I pay Oral-B when I could be contributing to hers? Like it makes you feel like there's something to be a part of. The other thing that like really stuck out to me is when I'm coming up with ideas, which is a lot for better or for worse, but when I'm coming up with different ideas for things, I'm always looking for something that is missing specific. Like, so to me, what I couldn't comprehend was why toothpaste? There's literally millions of toothpaste out there. How could you possibly feel comfortable investing financially in toothpaste when there's so many competitors? And so when she said, there's space for everyone. There's a million different leggings. She's not looking to be competition with Oral-B and Crest. She has an audience and patience and enjoys it and has ideas. And so she's just going to do her thing. And so it opened my eyes that you don't need to be Steve Jobs and create something that's never happened before. You can just make it how you want it to be.
For sure. And she obviously has a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and it's very compelling. I found her to be fascinating.
Fascinating. And then last thing is just that I really appreciated her transparency about private practice because a lot of private practice owners, they get that it's a lot of grunt work, a lot of not fun activities that you have to do, but overall they're happy with the freedom and all of that. And she's kind of like, this is better, you can have a better life being an entrepreneur and still having the dental degree and going back to that whenever you need and helping people. So I just think it offered a different perspective of another business avenue people can get into in this space. So let's welcome Dr. Brigitte White to Medical Morons. We usually like to start with a little bit of your background. You have an extensive education, obviously, and you have so many ventures that I'm interested in. I want to know when you were in my position, when you're graduating and you're entering the workforce, that transition from your education into your first couple of jobs.
Yeah, I graduated a while ago, 2007, and the world was different. I actually was a late bloomer getting into healthcare. So I didn't even decide to be a dentist till 2 years out of college. It was September 11th, living in New York. I actually worked in New York City. That made me decide to go to work with people on a human level. So
What
I
did
decided
you
to go.
work as?
My job, actually, at the time, I was working at MTV Networks. I was a contract coordinator. I worked in law and business affairs, and I was on my way to law school. My parents, they said, you have 1 year to figure it out. I didn't really want to be a lawyer, but I had a lot of experience in law because I worked at an intellectual property law firm in between summers in college. And I always wanted to actually work at MTV. I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun, a great experience. But then I totally, did a huge 180. I moved back to Philly. I'm actually from Philadelphia. So after September 11th, I moved back to Philly and I decided to go into science and healthcare. I actually thought about nutrition, becoming a nutritionist, and I started researching nutrition, and a lot of articles were pointing to oral health and that there was a shortage of dentists in North America, Canada, and the United States. And there were children dying of dental infections. And my background in college, at Princeton, I studied policy. So I had a high regard for healthcare policy and disparities. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go to dental school. Just like that, whimsical. Hadn't done pre-med. And so I did my post-bac pre-med at Bryn Mawr College, actually, right near Penn. Started shadowing my dentist, my oral surgeon, and I applied to dental school while taking all my pre-meds, and I get into school, and so I think, oh, it's meant to be. Like, I'm supposed to be a dentist. So when I started dental school was when I really learned about the profession. I didn't even know the specialty.
Which is funny though, because I have a feeling you would have gotten into any professional school you wanted to. And so it's funny to me that you're like, oh, like dental school was meant to be because I got in. Like you would have been just fine with law or whatever you got into. Okay, so continue.
Thank you. I tell people, I really, especially, blooming adults, how could you know what you want to do at 16? I know with dentistry, what I've learned is it really is a legacy profession. Many dentists are exposed to it through family members. But yeah, my parents, they really came of age during the civil rights movement. I'm 8th generation African American, and I'm the first generation that actually had all my civil rights. And so my parents pushed my sisters and I to do everything. They really did not set any limits. So when I told them I wanted to go to dental school, they're like, okay, you want to be an astronaut? And I really do appreciate that. I've come from a nurturing family. My mother's an educator. My dad, he was an accountant, so he's very practical. So of course he was like, oh, good, there's a shortage, definitely do that. So to answer your question, by the time I got to the end,
I like him already, by the way.
I was like, I feel that resonates.
Yeah, it's always good. And my dad, he passed right before COVID, but he's right here on my shoulder, giving me a head nod or, raising his eyebrows about various decisions. But yeah, so we're in a dental school. I knew I didn't want to specialize. I didn't like anything that much. And I was ready to go to work. I had borrowed another $35,000 to do post-bac dental school. I know it's not what you borrowed, but I think the last year was like $85,000. So at that point, I was like, I need to pay this money off. So what can I do with what I've learned at Penn? And I actually went right into private practice. I worked at a small practice in Washington, D.C. at the Watergate Dental Associates. I learned a lot, and then I branched out and I worked on K Street. And then I got married. I met my husband, fell in love. And I had always wanted to live abroad. Live in Europe. I lived abroad as a child in Japan when I was 10, went to Japanese public school. And that was actually a bit of exposure to the importance of oral health. And then in Japan, we used to brush our teeth at school. After lunch, we had a little mug and toothbrush in our cubby.
That is
and we would brush our teeth. And we had a dentist at the school. And actually, we used to get certificates. And my mother explained to us that after the war, we introduced more calcium to their diet. And, our generation was the first to actually be able to see some of those visible results. And so having had access in my own life, and then, of course, seeing it on an international level, imagine I'm reading about these disparities, 10 years later, and I was shocked. And I was really idealistic. And I was like, I'll fix the problem. I'll become a dentist and I'll provide more care. So after working in private practice, I had an opportunity to move to Germany, and I worked as a civilian contractor. And that was great. I mean, I lived in Stuttgart for 3 years, and then I came back home and I went into public health. I wanted to start paying off some of that debt more aggressively. I worked in DC at a maternal care center for 4 years, and I got a little bit of scholarship from National Health. But really, I had a decent salary as a general dentist in the city. That was 4 more years. And then I had that light bulb like, oh, I'll just open my own office, because that's the trend, right?
Mm-hmm.
I took that on 8 years ago. But I really do like that I've had the opportunity to see the profession in all different angles. Of course, joining the faculty at Penn was also great, to go back and see the students. So I don't know if it's a roundabout story, but
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, public health, I would love to, give back and do all of that, but you got to pay off those loans. And so it's interesting to me that you were still able to be so committed to giving back right off the bat when you could have probably worked at a boutique practice that paid you more. So, did you pay off your loans before you started your own private practice? Because to me, the financial burden of more loans for private practice feels daunting.
that's a great question. And now, being on the other side of it, I actually say first and foremost, dentistry is a capital intensive profession. It requires money at every level. You invest $1 million up front, and then it requires you to continue to invest. I got a 1970 dental degree, essentially, right? I learned how to do, copper band techniques and analog impressions. And now I work in space. I have lasers, I have 3D X-ray machines, I have scanners, I have mills. And so at every level, you're required to invest in the training and the technology and equipment. And also, you are the captain of the ship. You're the most educated person in that environment. Unlike hospitals, physicians will work with medical staff that has extensive training, PhDs, research doctors, nurses. So as a dentist, now I know it's about money. It really is. It is helping people. It is science. It is all of that. It's interpersonal skills, but it's capital intensive. So I would think that they should talk to us more about that up front as students. I got a $75,000 loan repayment award in public health. So it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but that money went directly to the lender. In addition, I was paid a salary. In Germany, believe it or not, as a contractor, I wasn't paid a huge salary, but I had a lot of tax-free benefits. So I think it's important for you to look at where you can save in terms of taxes and also like your personal agenda. What I would say to emerging dentists is figure out where you want to live and what kind of lifestyle you want to lead, because obviously if you live in Kansas, you don't need to make as much money as you would need for you, Kylie, in Manhattan. I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But we don't want her moving to Kansas either. So
I might. So you did your private practice, which is very impressive, but I'm so curious about your other ventures. You have a YouTube channel, you have your own oral healthcare line, you have essays that you wrote. I wouldn't even know where to begin. It's the Black Dental Reserve. So I'm just curious how, I guess chronologically, how these played out and what caused you to get into these different facets of the profession.
Yeah, I actually wanted to be a writer. As a child, I wrote a lot of poetry. I actually wrote a book in high school. But my parents were like, well, if you're not an editor for the New York Times, they gave us the 5 professions, doctor, lawyer. My mother even suggested I become a judge because I could write decisions. So I told her, well, that's different than creative writing.
Not as fun.
But I never stopped writing, essentially. And then I studied international democratization, healthcare policy, urban education policy. So I always had a high regard for policy. And practicing, I witnessed the disparities, right? I was working in Washington, D.C. I was seeing patients from all over the world. And then on the provider level, Black dentists, we only make up 3% of the dental workforce, and I haven't seen that change. So it was kind of like my own personal responsibility to address it. And for me, it was empowering to write articles and kind of figure out the solution, like why there aren't enough Black dentists, right? And I was able to look historically as to how African Americans have been cut out of wealth building opportunities, access to education, and then understanding especially that now that I can concretely say dentistry being so capital intensive, that is a key component that locks out a lot of people to the profession across race, but specifically if you haven't had that treasure of wealth behind you. And then in practice, when I was in public health working with children, so I worked at a maternal care center, and the colonel was like, oh, Dr. White's great with kids. And so I just got dumped with all the kids, and they loved my name, Dr. White. And so I actually started to create stories about the teeth, and Cutter the canine, Max the molar, Penny the premolar, Billy the bacteria bully. And then upon having my own child, I realized it is not easy to get kids to brush their teeth. We think it's, oh, just open up. And so that inspired my blogs. And then, of course, actually writing a short story, Making the Cut, and then coupling it with an activity book, coloring, connect the dots to teach children about their teeth. That was probably good therapy for me because dentistry is stressful. The way I manage the stress of dentistry is to do other things. So teaching is great because it reminds you what this is all about, right? Writing allows me to use my voice in a different capacity. And then finally, I always in the back of my head wanted my own, I don't know, it's not that I wanted my own toothpaste per se, but I used to talk about products. So my YouTube channel started it off with education for children, for parents. And then I started talking about products. And I always had a high regard for how we test these products for safety and efficacy. And then because my background as an intellectual property paralegal, I worked with big pharma. I mean, I worked on the M&M Mars case. The peanut butter packaging on the M&Ms too closely resembled the packaging on the Reese's Pieces. So Hershey sued Mars, and Mars won. We won. And actually I did research at NYU Library on color perception in food packaging. So I always had a high regard for how the market is. And the purple pill, Prilosec, I worked with AstraZeneca. And so I think about our patients come to us and they say, oh, I saw this on TikTok, and will it make my teeth white? And you're looking at them, you're like, well, you smoke, you don't even brush your teeth, and you're trusting a 17-year-old on TikTok. You know, it's amazing, but it's a different part of our brain. It's aspirational, it's fun. But general dentist, at least once a day, somebody tells me maybe they hate me, but definitely I don't like you. So that does wear on me.
That's part of why I didn't like dentistry, honestly, because I was like, I want everyone to like me. That's incredible. I guess more on your products. You always wanted to do that, and you clearly have a background in it. Did you find a need in the space for another toothpaste? Like, how did you decide toothpaste? Because even me as a dentist, I mean, I'm an orthodontist, I don't even know which toothpaste to get. I'm like, as long as it has an ADA thing and it's Crest, Oral-B, it's like it's a big name, has fluoride in it. I'm good. So how did you figure out that this was a need in this space and you could benefit financially from it?
So I saw a space because there's always room for more. Number one, I understood the monopoly, which is like, it's really three companies, Colgate, Palmolive. And so when you see a Colgate product, that's one thing, but Colgate owns Thomas of Maine. They own Hello. When Colgate sees competition, they just eat you up. And then Procter & Gamble, which is Crest. And now we know Crest is Oral-B. And now we have this natural movement. And that natural movement, gut health is important, but shots of apple cider vinegar erode your teeth. And then the patients come to us, sensitivity is up 500%. Initially, I thought about just having like a box of products that I recommend, kind of like, is it like Harry's Shaving, like a subscription service, something like that. And I actually thought about calling it like an oral beauty box. And so my boss from MTV, he's an IP lawyer in LA, he always registered my coloring books, all my characters. He trademarked them because he's like, if you ever see your characters on Nickelodeon, you're going to be like, those are my characters. So he always was behind me protecting my work. And one day he was like, I was trying to do the trademark it was going to be called Smile Spruce. And then he was like, why don't you just come out with your own toothpaste and call it Dr. White's? And I was like, no, I don't want to be in front of it. I don't want to see any more patients.
Wait, sorry, I don't understand what were you doing before that you were trying to add on to an existing brand?
Yeah, so I was registering a trademark. It was actually going to be called Smile Spruce, and it was going to be a box, and then I was going to rotate products by other companies that I recommended. And that was going to be commerce, right? E-commerce. This was kind of like the emergence of the internet, online beauty, oral beauty, more products. And I was like, let's stay with that trend. But my mentor, who's now my business partner, his light bulb went off and he was like, you just need to have your own toothpaste and your name is perfect. And we actually, a year ago, we incorporated Bright White's Oral Care. And now we have our flagship toothpaste is a fluoridated toothpaste that comes in 3 flavors. So we have 3 SKUs on Amazon, Walmart.com, and then I sell it at the practice in brick and mortar. And we have 11 more products coming out. I thought that some would be out this spring, but it's going to be summer.
Did you develop the formula for the products? Is that something that you went to a laboratory and were mixing different, flavorings and creams and everything? Like, how did you do all that?
No, so there's 2 ways. Like you mentioned, that's one way, which is really expensive. Dermatologists will talk about that a lot. I actually started with white label. So there are already FDA approved formulas, which manufacturers have, and then you can tweak it a little bit. So I did tweak it to have a fluoride level that I like. I added some ingredients. I have natural ingredients, aloe vera juice for wound healing, grapefruit seed extract, which tightens our collagen, coconut oil. So often patients are sensitive to sulfates. So my toothpaste is sulfate free. Instead, we use a coconut-based sodium cocoa glutamate. That surfactant, it allows the toothpaste to foam up a little bit, which makes brushing more pleasurable, but it doesn't have the sulfate, which is not good for the environment and also causes the irritation.
What was the process of testing that and, trial and error on different kinds of things? Where did you do all that?
We found a few manufacturers that we wanted to work with. And what you do is you reach out to them and you talk about, some of your goals, and then you can request samples and you can look at the ingredients. Really, the internet, go online, research the product, look at existing products. And then we're still in beta technically. We've had 750 orders. We've been able to make profit to reinvest. And now as we are developing additional products, we kind of get the feedback with little things like the packaging. There's a little air in the container. So we're like, okay, instead of 3.5 ounces, we'll do 4.2. And then understanding like how much things cost, just learning, really looking at the industry. It's $60 billion. There's room for more. There's room for someone to sell white socks. Like, it's America, right? So I think what's different is that I actually am a dentist. And I have personal experience. I have a line specifically designed for women that's coming out, and myself being 46 next week, I am going through my own hormonal changes. And now I can say from my own experience and having treated patients that our oral health goes through different phases, specifically pregnancy and the menopausal journey, perimenopause, all of the hormonal changes that impact our salivary flow, everything that affects our mood. There are some ingredients that are fun, right? Like I'm going to have chamomile in the menopause toothpaste, and that's like a stress reliever, but also an ingredient that is found in the citrus fruit, and it's called limonene. It's a terpene. It allows stress relief, and it also has like anti-aging, anti-cancer ingredients and benefits. And then for the pregnancy toothpaste, I'm going to have potassium gluconate, which actually helps us because of hyperemesis and nausea. We lose a lot of our potassium from throwing up. And then, of course, anti-sensitivity components, because all of that acid erosion from throwing up can leave our teeth very soft.
What I like about what you're discussing and the way you're describing it is that my perception of a lot of the products on the market today, including some stuff that Kylie probably uses, is that it's more about marketing than having an underlying science-based product. And it sounds like you're very meticulous about identifying an issue in the mouth and then applying a solution to it. And I think that gives it a lot of credibility. And I also think it's brilliant that you're finding these subcategories of need that are not currently being addressed. I mean, that's brilliant. Dr. White. You have so many things going on. Can you give us a summary of what a day in the life, or what's your schedule? Are you in the office 4 days a week? How much time are you spending on these adjacent opportunities and product development activities and things like that?
Yeah. Well, I've decided that I'm going to transition my office to another owner. You know, full transparency, running a practice is not only expensive, but it's very stressful. The dentistry is probably 2% of it. Managing other people, payroll, equipment, OSHA, Virginia Commonwealth laws, everything. A patient population that's being fired and let go. I mean, this is too much for me, but it really is timely because the oral care brand is growing. And now I really need to create content. I use social media because it's free, but we have also partnered with marketing companies. And so now it's game time, as my partner told me in our business meeting this week.
And how did you connect with your business partner? And if you can share with us a little bit about the arrangement you have in place, I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, well, he was my boss at MTV. So he was VP of Law and Business Affairs at MTV Networks. He's a lawyer trained at USC and then George Washington University. He has his own law firm. He provides trademark, intellectual property needs, contracts, just things for other producer type people in the industry. But he was always my mentor. And then again, he was always like that big brother telling me to protect all of my intellectual property. So I was always powwowing with him about my ideas. And as we were waiting for the registration of Smile Spruce, I was like, Smile Spruce, Smile Spruce. And I was so passionate. But Sean, my business partner, eventually he's like, all right, I have an idea. Your own toothpaste, Dr. White's Bright Whites. And I was like, no. And then he convinced me. And we were like playing with logos, and he incorporated LLC. Remember, that's his job, right? He can do all that research, and it's nothing for him. If you Google Bright Whites, it's so popular. But it's the name of my practice, and it's the name of my children's books, Dr. White's Bright Whites, Bright Whites Dental. The SEO is already used to me. And then, of course, my name is Brigitte White. You know, we are seeking funding, but we're still kind of conservative. We don't want to give up too much of our equity. So we're bootstrapping, but it's nice to see, like, I mean, these Seller Central, Amazon, when you can see that people are buying your products. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh my gosh, 20 people bought my toothpaste yesterday. I didn't have to worry about parking and traffic and insurance claims and my license renewal and OSHA. I mean, can you imagine? There was no equipment, no overhead. So it's great. I'm learning a lot about e-commerce.
Yeah, for sure. I did just want to go back quickly to when you were formulating the toothpaste. Again, when I'm having Oral-B Crest, any type of toothpaste, I don't have any cavities. My teeth look good. My gums look good. I'm happy. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between any toothpaste. How are you able to like troubleshoot that to know that yours was the formulation you wanted it to be?
Well, I think number one, before we even started, I kind of did have like a little wish list in my head. There were certain ingredients, like certainly a remineralization component. I look at the competitors. I look at Tom's of Maine. I'm like, what is in that product, right? I look at Arm & Hammer. Some of the bigger companies, they use some products that really aren't as safe as we'd love them to be, but they have that freedom because people don't even know. They just buy the product because it's available. So I was able to kind of find that happy medium of what was already on the market, making sure it had what I want to stand behind, and then, trying them. To answer your question, look, it's just like competitors. If you started a legging company, you would look at Fabletics. What do they do? What makes them different? But at the end of the day, it's just some spandex and some stitching, right? So looking at what's there, safety and efficacy, of course, like I actually have a license to protect, and then trying it. Honestly, it still tickles me when one sister's a lawyer at Hopkins, super picky, super particular. She's like, I'm not just saying this because you're my sister, Bridget. Like, I love the pineapple. I love it. Like, that's like, it warms my heart. So at the end of the day, the patients, they want something they can afford and they feel good about. And it's just toothpaste. It's not a kidney transplant. So I think it should be fun and accessible and empowering. And that's where I think, I just want to give them as much information as possible.
What I always like to ask people, Dr. White, is, what is it that you know now that you wish you had known either when you began your career in dentistry and product development or, along the way? What was the lesson learned?
Really, this is a real talk, like personal testimony. I wish I was more confident. Believe in yourself more. I wanted to be a writer. Why didn't I just try? If I had just given it 3 more years, I could have been a blogger. And then I think that in many aspects, America is the most competitive place on earth. To become a dentist, it's a long-term commitment. You're going to go through ups and downs, losses. You might lose a parent. You might get sick. You're going to invest a lot of money. You have to hope and believe it works out. When it's really bad, you still have to go back and do it because it's your job. And so I would say, allow yourself to be human and allow yourself to evolve. The good thing is that dentistry typically has a lot of daunting, aspects because it's very solitary. We work by ourselves. But now we have the internet, we have social media, we can talk to each other, we can watch YouTube. We're not just committed to a little operatory with one assistant and, patients on paper. So yeah, I would say trust yourself and allow yourself to grow, and forgive yourself.
Good advice.
So true. I love that. We like to end just with, if you have any anecdote or story you can tell us from dental school, practicing, from your companies, anything that within the field that is just like a funny, silly story.
Gosh. There's so many funny things. I guess I'll give you one from school. I started school in 2003. What is now the student lounge, where you guys have those little study rooms, was our GRD, like our pre-clinic. And I'm at the end of the alphabet. I'm always, right now I'm a Zhivkovich, but before I was White. And we were in this little room. It was about 10 of us. And one day the clinic flooded, like the plumbing flooded in the basement. And they had us still in that clinic. They were like, because we had a denture exam. And I had just bought these little boots. They were like wannabe wellies, and they were green. And I had them in my trunk. And I went to my car and I got those boots on. And Dr. Coburn, he passed away. He always give me he used to say I held my hand so daintily when I would wax up teeth. And he's like, you're so smart. You're so, you're brilliant. The boots. And I was like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to pass this test.
That's amazing. So true. It's like, okay, we'll just pretend we're working outside at this point.
Yep. Gotta go. Yep. What's next?
Gotta do what you gotta do. That's incredible. All right. Our listeners are definitely going to want to find you after this. Where can they find your company, your Instagram, your practice, all the things where they can get to know more about Dr. White's brand?
Well, I'm active mostly on Instagram at Dr. Brigitte White. And my oral care line is Bright White's Oral Care. brightwhitesoralcare.com is our main site, and you'll find links to my Amazon store.
And by the way, if you want to send us a free sample or two, we're not.
Oh, I'd love to.
We're not opposed to that.
And honestly, I think this is great, Kylie. Especially with your dad.
Thank you so much. And I was just telling my dad, you've just been such an advocate. You're supporting everyone.
You're a great guest. Thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was fascinating. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Take care.